There are men who speak truth, and men who are killed for it. There are those who fight for gold, and those who fight for freedom. In the deserts of Libya, a man rose, not perfect, not without fault, but with a vision that shook the very foundation of global power. His name, Muammar Al-Gaddafi. His dream, one Africa, one currency, one people. But to the architects of colonial finance, this was treason. And for this, they made him a warning to all who dare to dream of African independence. This is not just the story of a man. It's the story of the war on African sovereignty. Born in the harsh Libyan desert in 1942, Muammar Gaddafi came into a world dominated by colonial powers. Libya had only recently been wrested from Italian rule and was transitioning into a pseudo-independent monarchy under King Idris, a man widely seen as a puppet of Western interests. Gaddafi's early life was shaped by poverty, Bedouin traditions, and a deep resentment of foreign control. He read voraciously Nasser, Marx, Islamic theology, and the nationalist philosophies sweeping across the Third World. In 1963, he enrolled in Libya's Royal Military Academy, where he began to quietly recruit loyalists and form a revolutionary cell. By 1969, the young captain, then just 27 years old, led a bloodless coup that overthrew King Idris. Libya was declared a republic. Gaddafi immediately set about dismantling the colonial legacy, expelling US and British forces, and nationalizing the oil industry. He positioned himself not merely as a Libyan leader, but as a symbol of the Third World's fight against imperialism. Gaddafi's vision was radical. Oil revenues were redirected toward healthcare, education, infrastructure, and housing. Libya's literacy rates soared. Access to electricity and clean water expanded dramatically. He built one of the world's largest civil engineering feats, the Great Man-Made River, to supply desert cities with water. He authored the Green Book, a manifesto blending socialism, Islamic values, and direct democracy. It rejected capitalism and communism alike, proposing a unique Libyan system governed by people's congresses rather than parties. But beyond Libya, Gaddafi envisioned global revolution. He bankrolled liberation movements across Africa and the Middle East. The ANC in South Africa, the PLO in Palestine, Frelimo in Mozambique, and the IRA in Ireland. To the west, he became a pariah. To the oppressed, a beacon. He survived multiple assassination attempts, US bombing in 1986, and decades of sanctions, yet remained defiant. By the 1990s, disillusioned with the Arab League's inertia and betrayal, Gaddafi turned fully toward Africa. He poured billions into the continent, building roads, funding telecommunications, sponsoring AU projects, and advocating tirelessly for a United States of Africa. He envisioned a single African government, one passport, a continental army, a central bank for Africa. He funded the African Satellite Project, allowing African countries to bypass Western-controlled communication networks. He bankrolled the creation of the African Union, helping transform the defunct Organization of African Unity. In summits and speeches, he challenged African leaders to unite, warning that divided nations would remain vulnerable to economic sabotage and military intervention. His crowning ambition was the African dinar, a gold-backed currency to free Africa from the US dollar, the euro, the CFA franc, and their associated chains. Gaddafi understood the machinery of control, the Bretton Woods system, the IMF, the World Bank, institutions built not to liberate, but to subjugate through debt and dependency. With 143 tons of gold and vast oil wealth, Gaddafi proposed a revolutionary idea: create a currency for Africa, backed not by fluctuating paper, but by physical gold, an African dinar. He began courting African leaders, many of whom welcomed the idea. Oil-producing nations could sell in gold. Importing nations could escape the chokehold of foreign exchange reserves. It would be a death blow to the petrodollar and neo-colonialism. Western intelligence agencies took notice. Leaked Hillary Clinton emails from 2011 confirmed NATO was aware and deeply alarmed by Libya's gold reserves and Gaddafi's plan to introduce a Pan-African currency. To global financial elites, the African dinar was not just a threat, it was war. In 2011, amidst the Arab Spring, Libya erupted in protests, but what began as demonstrations quickly transformed into armed rebellion. Armed armed and funded by foreign powers. Western media launched a relentless propaganda campaign. Gaddafi was killing his own people, a mad dog dictator. NATO invoked responsibility to protect, a thin veil for regime change. Over 26,000 airstrikes rained down on Libya. Entire cities were destroyed. Rebels, some affiliated with Al-Qaeda, were given weapons and legitimacy. On October 20th, 2011, Gaddafi was captured, brutalized, and executed in the streets of Sirte. He had warned, "If I go down, Libya will burn." And burn it did. When the bombs fell on Libya, the silence from African leaders was deafening. Gaddafi had given billions to the continent. He had built roads, hospitals, and invested in Pan-African institutions. But when he needed them most, many turned away. Some, like Nigeria and South Africa, voted for the UN resolution allowing military action. Others remained mute. The African Union, once envisioned as a force of unity and defense, was powerless. Why? Because too many African elites are beholden to foreign loans, to offshore bank accounts, and to Western political patronage. Gaddafi's death revealed a bitter truth. Africa's unity could not be built on the backs of compromised men. Today, Libya is a shadow of its former self. Once the richest nation in Africa, with free education, healthcare, and housing, it is now a fractured, lawless state. Multiple rival governments compete for control. Armed militias run vast territories. Foreign powers, Turkey, Russia, the UAE, vie for influence. Terrorist groups like ISIS found a foothold. Even worse, Libya became a hub for human trafficking and modern slavery. African migrants are sold in open-air slave markets. There is no central bank, no gold reserves, no African dinar. Just chaos. This is the freedom NATO brought. What if Gaddafi had succeeded? What if the African dinar had taken root? What if Africa had spoken with one voice? Though Gaddafi is gone, the ideas he planted are blooming once again. Youth across the continent chant his name. Pan-Africanist movements grow in Ghana, Mali, Burkina Faso, Congo, and beyond. The fight against the CFA flank, the rejection of French troops, the call for a new African identity, all echo Gaddafi's warning. He was not a perfect man, but he saw what few others dared to see, that Africa's liberation would not come from handshakes with Europe, but from a united stand against exploitation. Gaddafi's death was a political assassination, not of a tyrant, but of a symbol. He died, not for what he did wrong, but for what he was about to do right. They feared a free Africa, an Africa with its own money, its own army, its own voice. He was flawed, yes, but he was ours. Africa must remember, or it will repeat, and one day it must rise, not just in protest, but in power.